It is Saturday, October 17th, 2015, and welcome to episode 5 of the Multifarious Man podcast. When you're a jet, you're a jet. I'm your host, Jay Vincent, aka the Multifarious Man. On today's episode, I'm going to discuss the songs used in television and musicals. Now, to be clear, I'm not talking about the score or background music. I'm talking about songs that the characters hear and sing. So something like Say a Little Prayer from My Best Friend's Wedding would be part of the conversation, but Highway to the Danger Zone from Top Gun would not. So sit back and relax and enjoy the show. Some very greatly diverse and manifold, all the things I want to say that never been told. Dina Sinatra to Drake and Pharrell. When I'm listening to this week, you can never tell. Bogey and Bacall, even Meryl Streep. The devil wears Prada, even the big sleep. It doesn't matter where you stand, I'm the multifarious man. All right, welcome back to the show. Again, I'm your host, Jay Vincent, and this is the Multifarious Man podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at Multifarious Man, or you can send me any comments or questions to multifarious.man.podcast@gmail.com. So like I said in the intro, today we're going to be talking about music and movies and musicals and television shows. And again, this is not the score or the background music. It's actual music that the characters either sing or hear in the course of the story. But first up, I'm going to talk to you about some of the things that I've been reading, watching, and listening to within the past few weeks. The book I'm actually currently reading, I just started. It's part of a trilogy. It's called The 100,000 Kingdoms, and it's part of the Inheritance trilogy. It's actually book 1, and it's by an author by the name of N as in Nancy, K as in King, Jemisin. Now, the copy on the back of the book goes as such. Yen Dar is an outcast from the barbarian north, but when her mother dies under mysterious circumstances, she is summoned to the majestic city of Sky. There, to her shock, she is named as an heiress to the king. But the throne of the 100,000 kingdoms is not easily won, and Yen is thrust into a vicious power struggle. Now, this book is written in the first person, so I'm just now getting to meet the main character. And as the blurb on the back of the book says, she's thrust into it immediately. Within moments of arriving in this kingdom and meeting a grandfather who happens to be the king that she never knew, she's named heir to the throne. Only problem is there are 2 other heirs to the throne, and usually in this society that doesn't usually play out well. So we'll see how she fares, especially considering that she hasn't lived in this city. Her mother took her away years ago, so she doesn't know all of the customs. So she's going to have to navigate the customs of this society while she actually tries to stay alive. So we'll see how it goes. It's interesting so far. It's written in the first person. And if you know anything about things written in the first person, sometimes the narrator or the subject of the story is not always the most honest or always, the best point of view. So we'll see whether or not she's telling us the truth as these things go along. But I'm excited to start this new trilogy. Now, in terms of music, there's something I discovered this week, and I'm surprised I haven't heard of this group before. They're called Pentatonics, and it's an a cappella group made up of a quintet of vocalists from Arlington, Texas. Now, I've never actually heard of them before until the past week, but I was watching Jimmy Fallon the other night, and they were sitting in with The Roots, who is his house band, and I heard them sing a version of Cheerleader, which is a new popular song that's out right now. They just recently released an album that's self-titled. It's not their first album, but some of the standout songs I've heard so far are, of course, Cheerleader, and then a version of Justin Bieber's Where Are You Now, and a throwback from the early 90s, which was originally done by a group named Shy, and it's called Where Are You Now? It's called If I Ever Fall in Love. They have a nice sound. It's 4 men and 1 woman. So I'm interested to see, go back and listen to their catalog. But I was streaming it the past couple of days on Apple Music. Now, finally, for TV watching, I've recently stumbled upon a show on ABC called Quantico. Now, this is a, typical melodrama. This looks at the lives of young FBI recruits training at the Quantico base in Virginia, when one of them is suspected of being a sleeper terrorist. And the exciting thing I've seen of this show so far is it's told kind of in flashbacks. So you get to see when you first meet the trainees, you kind of get some background around each of them and their interaction as they're going through their actual training course. But then it actually jumps forward into the future to after an actual terrorist attack in New York. And one of the trainees is actually accused of being the terrorist. So we kind of jump back and forth. It uses that story narrative that's been used a lot lately, where you flash forward, you flash back, and you learn a little bit about each person as it goes along. So I'm a little excited about this one. It's only 3 episodes in, but so far it's, kept me on the edge of my seat. It's exciting so far, so we'll see where it goes. All right, so that's what I've been reading, watching, and listening to. So when we come back, we're actually going to get into today's show and talk about music and songs in movies and television. So we will be right back. All right, we're back on the show. Again, this is episode 5 of the Multifarious Man podcast, and we are talking about music in movies and musicals. Now, the first thing I want to actually talk about is an episode of a show called Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Now, this was originally a movie by Joss Whedon, and he eventually turned it into a television series that actually lasted for, I believe, 6 or 7 years, and made a star out of Sarah Michelle Gellar. And the title character, Buffy, was a slayer. And so basically she's this teenage cheerleader, and she learns that she has the power to fight vampires and all creatures of evil. Now, this was a very straightforward melodrama every week, dealt with high school issues, and, of course, vampires and the end of the world. Now, one episode, a couple of seasons in, they decided to do an entire musical episode. And the episode was titled Once More with Feeling. Now, the way they were able to pull this off was, now I might be wrong, it was either a demon or some character on the show cast a spell, and due to this spell, it forced everyone, the vampires, the demons, the gang of vampire slayers, to break into song. So the whole episode, this is what happened. They sang their way through it. And it was actually a very good episode. The music, the dance numbers, the singing, and like your typical musical, everything that everyone thought or spoke came out in song. And it was well reviewed, well accepted, and, it goes down in the annals of television history as a classic episode. And the reason I bring it up is this is one of the things that music really does in television and film. It not only supports the characterization, supports the plot, but in a lot of instances, it actually brings out things that you didn't know about the characters, and it really helps to drive the story. And if you think back in the history, and it's not just like your shows like Glee, which was built on the premise of basically a Glee club, and, all of the things they dealt with as they were trying to make it, through regionals, through sectionals. So, of course, everything they thought and, dreamed about was played out in song. So these kids actually redid a lot of modern songs. And it was, the show lasted for a few years on Fox. And it actually brought back the joy that people have listening to this type of thing. I mean, there's actually a movie called Pitch Perfect that actually recently had a sequel that actually, made a lot of money. So apparently there's an actual, drive for people to hear that type of music where people are actually singing a cappella, they're doing all the sounds and doing pretty interesting takes and covers on songs. Now, where I have a love for it is growing up, I've always loved musicals, whether it was staying up late and watching Grease, which of course, had a fantastic run on Broadway, until it was made into a movie musical starring Olivia Newton-John and John Travolta, when John Travolta was at the height of his stardom coming off of Welcome Back, Kotter. But the beautiful thing about these things is it's not just the music and the singing, but it's the emotion that goes along with it. And because musicals and music is so powerful, I mean, think of the images that go through your mind. Certain songs you hear, you may have always loved the song, but when it's tied to a film or a movie, it kind of really, really does stick into your mind because you think of the emotions of what the character was going through, or whatever the adventure, they were having at the time. I mean, think of the song. Drew a blank. I'm getting old. Old Time Rock and Roll. Here's a song that's been out for years, but suddenly when Tom Cruise in the movie Risky Business is dancing around in his underwear in his living room to this song, I mean, the song, which was already a classic, now you have generations of people that love this song because of a scene in a movie. And I bet you most people you ask, they've probably never even seen Risky Business, but everyone knows that scene and everyone knows that song. Another example, and I mentioned that in the intro, is in the movie My Best Friend's Wedding. They're at, I believe, a rehearsal dinner, and suddenly they all break into song, and they're singing Say a Little Prayer for You, which I believe is Dionne Warwick's song, a song you probably heard growing up. But now you have this image in your mind of all of these people sitting around the table. There were two twins that were singing the song. But now, anytime I hear that song on XM radio or oldie station, that's the image that gets into my mind. Now, music is not just, it's not just thrown in there. And except in the event of a musical where it's very specific and it drives the plot, it allows people to talk about what they're feeling, what's in their mind, what's going on subconsciously, and kind of driving the inner voice. I mean, then of course you have the big numbers, and of course people look and they go, "Oh, it's a musical, everyone knows the song," but that's not the point. It's just a form of storytelling. But music and the rhythm of how we communicate really kind of go hand in hand. But another way that it's used in movies and television shows, it's to really maybe drive an emotion that's going through. I mean, think of the Peter Gabriel song, In Your Eyes. Can you not imagine John Cusack standing under Ione Skye's window, holding the boombox above his head in Say Anything? I mean, that's the image you have. Whenever you hear that song, you think of, here's this young man that's in love, and he'll do anything to get this young lady to just talk to him. So whenever I hear that song on the radio, I mean, that's what I think of. It makes you think of love. It makes you think of that feeling that you have when you're in love. And I mean, it's the song that did it. I mean, it's a powerful scene, regardless, but think about what went into choosing that particular song and how it just fits perfectly. I mean, the song wasn't written for the movie, but it was chosen for that scene. And, now the two go hand in hand. You can't think of anything without it. Now, another thing, of course, I touched on musicals briefly, but I want to say some of my favorite movies of all time just happen to be musicals. And I think it's because the feeling you get when you kind of can sing along, it's, remembering lines from movies. People, remember the main lines or they remember the punchlines. But there's something about a musical because the way we learn, and, you learn songs, you can remember thousands of songs and lyrics from when you're young to you're old. And when that music starts playing, those songs come back and you know them word for word. I mean, think about the first time you saw The Sound of Music. The first time you heard Maria singing, the hills are alive at the sound of music. Or, the fun of Doe a Deer. I mean, I can't hear that song, or, whether you're playing on the piano or some musical instrument, you just picture them running through the house in the countryside and singing that song. Or these are a few of my favorite things. I mean, when I hear a dog bark, I think of that song. When there's lightning and thunder outside, that song jumps into my head. That's how, music and lyrics and how it just gets into your soul, and that's what you feel, and you remember these things your whole life. I mean, I'm never going to forget The Sound of Music, or Idlewild. They're singing at the end when they're trying to get away from the Nazis, and they're saying goodbye to their homeland. I mean, think of how you feel when you hear it. The song is, it just grabs you. Or when the kids are singing, good night, good night. I mean, how can you just not tear up when you see these things? Or the excitement you get at the end of Grease when Danny and Sandy are singing "You're the One That I Want." Chills are multiplying. I mean, you just picture it. I mean, how could you not remember that song or the feeling that you have when you heard it? Singing in the Rain, another example. Fabulous musical. You have Good Morning, that whole song they sing, where they're dancing around or make them laugh, or even Singing in the Rain. The joy and the excitement, that he's actually Gene Kelly when he's singing and dancing in the rain, and the look on his face when the officer comes up at the end. This is why music is such a fantastic thing. This is why I love musicals. This is why when television gets it right, the characters reference song or they include music, and it's not, again, like I said in the beginning, it's not just the soundtrack and the background and the score. That's an important part, but when music and songs are used by the characters to express feelings, that kind of nails it. I mean, there's something about song, just one lyric or one line can express, how the boy feels about the girl, how a parent feels about a child. You can express love, pain, loss, anger. These are all things that music allows you to do, that sometimes just, straight acting or comedy or drama, and, it doesn't always do the things that you needed to do, but you add that song, that perfect song and that perfect music, and that's what you get. So, that's why I love musicals. So go out there, dust off those old VHSs, pull out the old soundtrack, take a chance, go out and listen and watch Sound of Music, or, people forget even The Wizard of Oz is a musical. Think about how much you love it if you do. Remember the first time you heard, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. That song just gets you. Or, more recently, in my generation, you have Dreamgirls. I'm telling you, I'm not going. When Effie sang that song, if you didn't feel it inside, something's wrong with you. Musicals and music, such a wonderful combination. And that's one of the many things I love about, that art form, because with the musicals, you have, you can have the album and listen to it and just picture what you remember for the movie or from the show. That's my love. And, there's just nothing like it. So that's really it. I didn't really have anything particular other than touching on those things, maybe I'll break them down a little bit further on future episodes. Pick a musical, break it down, talk about the score, like I said, or the soundtrack and the background music and how those things can be used to drive a show. Or, when you don't have it, you notice it. And if it's done for a specific purpose, it really can lead you down a particular path. But that's it for today. When I come back, we'll just wind down the show and maybe talk about what's coming up in future episodes. Again, I'm your host, Jay Vincent, and I will be back. We're back, and we're gonna wrap up another episode of the Multifarious Man podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope I didn't ramble on too much and bore anyone, but if you came back this week, I hope you come back again next week for another exciting episode. Next week, we're gonna change things up a little bit and focus mainly on music. So on next week's episode, I would like to cover the subject of top solo albums or what I want to say, not just solo albums, but top debut albums by artists. So it could be an artist that was in a group and went solo. And it doesn't really matter the genre. I'm actually going to capture a few different genres. So, from R&B to hip hop, maybe some rock. So send me your thoughts. I send this out to the audience. Send me an email, send me a comment on Twitter. Again, that's multifariousman, or at multifariousman at Twitter, or multifarious.man.podcast@gmail. Or you can check me out on Facebook under the Multifarious Man podcast. Let me know what you think. What are your top solo or top debut albums from your favorite artists? And it doesn't matter, again, what genre it is. But let me know what you think. What are your top songs, top debut albums from your favorite artists? Again, this is Jay Vincent, and I will catch you next week. Numerous and varied, greatly diverse and manifold. All the things I want to say that never been told. Dina Sinatra to Drake and Pharrell. When I'm listening to this week, you can never tell. Bogey and Bacall, even Meryl Streep. The devil wears Prada, even the big sleep. It doesn't matter where you stand, I'm the multifarious man.